Australia imported over 77,000 kilograms of medical cannabis in 2024. 77 tonnes. Flown across oceans, irradiated, quarantined, marked up, and handed to Australian patients at some of the highest prices in the world. Meanwhile, Australian growers with world-class facilities are fighting to survive in their own backyard. So today we ask the question, nobody can dodge it anymore. Is Australian medical cannabis actually sustainable, or is this a market designed to be owned by everyone except Australians?
If you want it, yeah, I'll pay, yeah.
Today I'm with Robert Collier from MA Genetics. Rob, give us a quick background about yourself.
I've been working with medicinal cannabis for over 25 years. Started my career in Amsterdam, moved from there to North America, South America. I've been throughout Asia, Africa, and yeah, now my home is in Australia. Genetics is my area of expertise, and yeah, we have a cultivation farm here in Western Australia.
So now you've heard the spiel about Rob, I'm going to give you the quick roadmap of what we're going to go through today. How the world came online, the global scoreboard, state versus federal, the legal issues, the Australian market as it currently sits right now, what sustainability actually looks like here, and which model survives in Australia. Now you've got the roadmap, it's time to get into it. Rob, let's take it back to the beginning. When did medicinal cannabis first come online in the whole entire world?
Look, we believe that, yeah, the very first prescribed patients in the United States was about 1976 or so. So it was a federal initiative set up to actually trial medicinal cannabis around cancer and glaucoma. I believe the first patient, his name was Robert as well, to be honest with you. Robert Randall, I believe. From there then, the next kind of really big shift kind of came about, like as we're familiar with today, would be around 1996 in California, which then kind of led the rest of the world to start kind of going forward from there. After that, you had kind of Canada take on the set, while they really have looked at the medical market, the recreational market, and they still operate today on a federal level, where it's available both medically and recreationally, or adult use is another common term. From there then we look at, like, Uruguay was also one of the first countries to start looking at large scale medical production. Australia was also one of the first that kind of kicked it in. It started here in about 2012 we started working on that to get it changed, working with the Reform group back then. And medicinal cannabis was legalised in Australia in 2016. It's referred to as Dan's Law. Should be some background. You should have Lucy on your show here, Jack.
Well, we'll get it down here then.
From there, we start then, once Australia kind of kicked it in, it started to expand globally kind of quite rapidly, so it did. We look at more countries then in South America. Argentina came online, Chile came online, we've had Portugal come online, we've had Germany come online, the UK is even starting to produce medicinal cannabis now as well. We've got Poland that's in there, and as well when we look at, like, our closest neighbours here, as everybody knows, the Thailand market is now producing a severe amount of it and distributing on a worldwide scale. So it is as well. So really, for what the medicinal cannabis market was 10 years ago and what it is now are two vastly different beasts.
Thailand came legalised around 2022, and then in 2025 they sort of tried to jump back to a medical level. However, the imports coming in are still phenomenally large.
Oh yeah, that's it. You've got exceptionally large imports coming into the country at exceptionally cheap prices.
And not to mention that Canada brought in roughly 62,000 kilograms, 62 tonne in 2024 alone, and the market's rapidly changed since 2024.
Very much so, very much so. We've got product coming in from South America, from Canada, from Thailand, from Europe. Like now it's more of a global market now than what it was before. And each of those regions, everyone's producing a different product, everyone's slightly producing it under different methods. And as well, what we're kind of seeing is we're also seeing different interpretations of cannabinoid profiles, terpene percentages, and all things like that as well. Which, you know, on a global market, we're looking at dialing everything in all at the same time, even though they tell us that all of the machinery and equipment and all that is dialed in at the same rate. Well, how come then if I test a product in Canada and I test a product here, don't get the same result I tested in Thailand, don't get the same result I tested in Europe, I don't get the same result. So, yeah, everyone is still kind of manufacturing their own numbers at the same time.
How do we fix that standard?
Well, as far as I'm concerned with regards to that standard is like, for a start, yeah, we need to be looking at how do we actually measure inside there. Is it going to be a focus on THC percentage, or is it a proper focus on the entire cannabinoid profile? As well, on top of that, as to what terpenes are available, volatiles and esters that are inside there. It's no longer just a case of like, oh, how much THC have we got in there? It's a very, very boring argument. It doesn't help anybody, it doesn't help the product, and it most certainly doesn't push the industry forward at the same time.
If you had to give a brief description of your overall standpoint and view of the global market from country to country over time, how it's progressed, would you be able to wrap it up in a generalisation over all the countries?
Well, okay, when it comes to indoor production, Canada's number one. Okay, when it comes to then, like, you're looking at greenhouse production and the rest of it, Thailand is kind of doing very well. Portugal does very well on greenhouse and outdoor production. When we're looking at greenhouse and outdoor production, South America is killing it. So they are. Some of the products that they've got coming out, they're focusing on longer flowering times and the rest of it. So bringing out those more unique and diverse varieties that you're not really seeing over here as well. Because when it comes to indoor production, you're always in that kind of tight schedule. You want to get a crop through, the next batch in. Sorry, you want to get a crop through let's restart that again. Okay, you want to get a crop finished so you can get the next one in pretty much in the quickest amount of time, so you can get the maximum amount of cycles in throughout a year, which when you're looking at obviously a commercial basis, that's what you're doing. I can't say that that's always the most beneficial for the patient, but on a commercial basis, when you're looking at the pressures of electricity, water, and yeah, air, labor, all of that, you can understand from a cultivator's perspective why they have to meet certain deadlines and certain schedules.
Mm-hmm. And then, as a generalisation of the market, how would you put that? You know, obviously these countries have come online as medicinal and they've evolved into other forms. Yep. Has there been a boom? Has there been a drawback in costing? What does it really look like?
Well, look, right, if you really want to start looking at like, booms, drawbacks and costings, like America is obviously the best example to look at that. Now, obviously the very difference between them and us here is that we are federally legalized here in Australia, which is a completely different scenario than what's happening in America. America is not federally legalized. It's legalized on a state-by-state basis, I'm going to repeat that again because I broke it up. America is legalized on a state-by-state basis, depending on some are recreational, some are medical, and some are both, so they are. In a lot of states in America, and I use Oregon as probably one of the best examples, Oregon produces a 7-year supply every year. So think about that. Every time a patient goes along to get prescribed their product, they've got 7 different every time a patient goes along to get prescribed their product, they've got 7 different options to choose from. And one of those options is bought, those other 6 producers don't get a look in. So when you look at the price pressures and as to how far that price has dropped, when you're looking at, for instance, like Michigan, when now apparently we're hearing things where medical flower is as low as $10 an ounce. Like, so that's not sustainable. There's nothing there for nobody, so there isn't. When we look as well as regards Canada, Canada is doing really well now because of the amount of product that they're actually exporting as well. And when you look at the price point that they're actually getting for the export product, the price point they're getting for their home sale product, it's kind of like, yeah, where would you want to be leaning towards? That export market, that European market, which is really hungry now for a huge amount of product, as well as being hungry now for a higher quality of product. That's where the market is kind of going. Those markets give the future an option, but the likes of America, where they've got a much higher production rate, where they've got a saturation inside the market. If they decide to change their laws and start to exporting, everybody else forget about it, right? Canada will shut up, we'll shut up, everyone, it's done. The game is over. I said they can supply the entire world very, very quickly. When we look at the overproduction that even goes on just in California alone, like you're looking at 9 to 15 times what the market is actually able to consume. And when we look as to where Californian product is being turning up, we can find traces of that like everywhere and anywhere. So the future of medicinal cannabis, sustainability of medicinal cannabis, is right, depending on making sure that those environments are controlled with the amount of producers that are inside it, the amount of products that are actually being put inside it, and as well as maintaining a price point where producers, retailers, and the patient can all live in the same one ecosystem.
So we're starting now to probably look at having caps or limitations on who can produce in a home ground and how many imports we're able to bring in, so that way we have some protection. Is that what you're sort of touching on?
Oh, look, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? Like, considering the fact that, what was it, how much did you say? It was 77 tons. So think about that there for a second, right? That's 77 tons that could have been produced by Australian producers.
And sold
and
in
sold
Australia.
in Australia. Now think about how much that would actually done for the economy and the business here. How much would that actually put into innovation, creation, R&D, and actually like essentially pushing the entire medicinal cannabis industry forward right here from Australia. Instead of it actually being essentially dominated by fruity pop or some other thing like that.
Some cali weed.
Like, it's like I said, an awful lot of it I look at and I kind of go like, is this what you call medical? Is this what we call like a proper sustainable product? Like, as we talk about, and I say myself, like, why is the patient getting a mystery box? Because 77 ton of product was imported overseas, which there's no consistency inside it. There's no, like, basically, what is this variety effective for? What it could be effective for? And then to keep it going with a patient as well, so that they've actually got the same product every month in, month out. That doesn't exist. And so if you're looking at a proper medical market, that needs to be the number one thing that we start looking at. And if we're not able to get the sustainability from overseas, which clearly we're not, we need to be focusing more on Australia to get that sustainability. While we look then at, like for us here federally, while we can operate right across the country, we can have different facilities operating together to produce different and unique products, as well obviously of course as allowing us to have the advantage of being able to export products as well. When we look at America, they can't export anything because they're not federally legalized. Here, we're federally legalized, and same as now as most of the medicinal cannabis producers around the world, they're stepping into that region. We will see America step into that market, but America is a bit of a slow-moving beast, so it'll take a few more years, which is to our advantage. It gives us time to protect ourselves. It gives us time to develop our own uniqueness, our own unique products, and as well to start a global domination of medicinal cannabis by Australians.
You know, so there are definitely things that could still be federally legal and smoothed out across the board. You know, it presents challenges when a consumer, a medical cannabis patient, is now travelling from state to state, needing medicine. Now we're not able to drive. Now we are able to drive. Oh, it's different here. It's different there. What can I get away with? What can't I get away with? What's wrong and what's right? And you know, we can talk about sustainability from that larger governing body, from the producers, the farmers, the dispensaries, but it also has to be sustainable for the patients.
Correct.
You know, and one of those things is being able to consistently get product that's of high quality and that's always the same, right? We don't need to be changing from strain to strain every doctor's appointment because it's out. It's not hot on the press anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an issue. But then it's also an issue of people being able to live their lives and consume their medicine and travel. It now becomes a very difficult thing for a lot of people to continue to live the way that they need to live due to medicine.
Like it is. And honestly, look, this is kind of, when we look at sustainability for medicinal cannabis, this is an area that really has to be kind of addressed. When we look at the stigma around medicinal cannabis, and it's like, okay, each state decides what they want to do, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Every state gets to decide what they want to do. The problem I have with that is that you've got politicians using this as a pedestal. So you do. So you got Tasmania, which decided it like a while ago, you know what, you prescribe medicinal cannabis, it's like being prescribed any other sort of a medication. If you feel the effects of it, you're not to operate any heavy machinery. Whether you're prescribed opioids, antidepressants, some sort of anxiety medication, there's a huge amount of medications out there that can cause people to have dizziness. They can kind of be a little bit disconnected for a while. So all of those can have an effect on operating any machinery and driving anything. So if we're going to have people jumping up and down, kind of going like, oh, we can't be driving on medicinal cannabis, well, you need to kind of draw a line then. You can't just turn around and start saying that medicinal cannabis patients aren't allowed to drive, but this guy here on opiates, that's okay. Antidepressants, that's okay. Because why? So why are we using this as a political kind of standstill? Why can't we essentially look together and go, you know what? We've tested it down in Tasmania on a trial case. The sky hasn't fallen in. The island hasn't blown up. It's, yeah, now okay, they're turning around and saying that, oh yeah, we don't know what the limits are, we don't know what this is. Look, we had all these situations before, like back in 2009 in Colorado. Like if somebody was suspected of being under the influence, a sobriety test was taken. And then if there was a belief that there was a high concentration of cannabis, they were taken back down to the police station for a test. Now that's no difference than what somebody would be doing if they were consuming a huge amount of alcohol, or someone that has been prescribed opioids and is kind of feeling a little bit, oh, kind of going on. So you've got to, you got to kind of draw a line. You've got to treat everybody the same way. You can't start deciding that, oh no, this medication isn't safe, but this medication is safe, when both of them can cause drowsiness. But once again, it's up to the patient to actually understand what they're experiencing.
Well, I guess one of the major talking factors in that point is that the THC is going to stay inside of your body and be readable for quite some time after consumption as well. Days, weeks, depending on who you are. So you may not have smoked during the week, but you could still show up positive on the weekend.
That is correct, yeah.
Right, so that's an issue in itself is, well, we can't just put you on a lick test because, well, you're going to show up positive, but you may not have consumed your medicine for 4 or 5 days knowing that you've had to drive.
That's it.
So,
like, look, everybody's metabolism is different. So as to, this is the whole point of medicinal cannabis. The varieties and cannabinoid profiles and terpenes that work for you are going to be very different than what might possibly work for me. And as to how your body metabolizes cannabinoids and how my body metabolizes cannabinoids are completely different. Like, that's based on genetics, age, diet, and all of those other areas kind of combined together. So to turn around and say that patient A and patient B, because they're both tested positive, that they're both under the same influence or they're both actually feeling the same thing, that doesn't necessarily mean anything whatsoever at all. As to, it should be simply a test for impairment, not actually a test of whether just because you've actually tested positive for cannabinoids, because our bodies have always held on to cannabinoids, whether that be THC, CBD, whatever it actually is. Now, that kind of goes around into a more expanded scientific side as regards your endocannabinoid system and all the rest of it. We have the receptors for that as to why our body holds on to it, and the rest of it, they're still areas that we're looking into study. But the problem is that it makes it real easy for different entities to use it as a stepping stone, because no matter what other medications are consumed, the body tries to get rid of them in a much faster pace. So you can consume something, it's usually gone within 24, 48 hours, not necessarily the case with medicinal cannabis. So when we look at it, like, it is kind of being unfairly pushed towards patients simply based on the fact that it hangs around longer inside the body. Now, why should patients, or why should anybody, be prosecuted over something like that for something that occurs naturally inside your body? You're not doing anything wrong. You are prescribed the product, but then it's like, no, you can't actually have it. So when we start kind of going towards a much more mature conversations about it, and politicians stop using it as a political kind of bounce board, while now it's like, oh, we've got some politicians support of it, other politicians going, no, there's not enough evidence. Well, you know what? How about you all combine together and look after the patient and not be trying to work out if you're going to get more votes out of it or not?
So what we're really seeing now is that Australia is over $1 billion industry and it's rapidly growing. We're currently at 37 licensed producers, which is I'm prepared to be wrong about because who knows what's happened over the last month or so. It is changing really quickly. When I was a little bit deeper into the industry a couple of years ago, we were around 12 to 13 licensed producers. So it's growing fast. We are producing roughly 50 to 60 tonne a year within our own country, but is the quality there? What's the Australian market really doing right now? Where are we at now? One area we're at right now is that we're importing more than we're producing.
We're importing 70% of our market. That's shameful to me, so it is. Like, I kind of go like, right, so when I'm talking to the guys from Canada, right, they're actually looking at me and they're going like, are you serious, guys? These are importing product from us, and you got that sun, and you got that land, and you got that environment down there that is way better than what they're going up over there. But no, we're going off to Canada to bring in product. Now, when we look at Australian producers, there is some guys out there that are absolutely killing it. I mean, like we've got female cultivators, we've got male cultivators, we've got young, we've got old, and I mean, they've just simply got a talent for it. Yeah, the plant seems to respond to them. And that's really good. At the same time, we've got a lot of other cultivators which are trying to kind of find their feet and trying to find exactly as to where their area is. And on top of it then as well, we've got some other cultivators which are just bringing the industry down at the same time. And regards their dodgy practice methods, regards some of the products, like I get contacted from overseas to ask me, hey, we received the product and this is what we're doing. Can you tell us anything about the producer? And I'm like, hey, someone I work with or someone I don't work with, yeah, that's kind of as to how that goes. But when you think about that for a second, right, okay, when you have Australian companies that some of them are producing a world-class product which is being consumed heavily in Australia and is actually going overseas, and you've got other guys which are like really producing poor-end products but still trying to kind of push it forward, it starts to kind of push towards, well, right, why? Why are some producing good products and why are some producing not so good products? That then starts to look as to how we're actually cultivating, the skill of actually the people that you're employing, and as well like as to the scale of production. Like, you know, to go from actually having a 1 acre farm to having a 50-acre farm is one hell of a transfer, so it is. It's completely different. Like, there's no... People think, oh, we're just going to keep it going along and it's just going to bum, bum, bum. That's not so much. And like a lot of large cultivators, when they don't exactly, how should I put it, have a history on how to produce medicinal cannabis, and they're just going to kind of walk in and go, hey, yeah, we're going to start producing all the fire. You know, in which I'm kind of going, yeah, I want to see you win and I want to see you push it forward. But sometimes you got to realize that, yeah, you don't have the skill, you don't have the genetics, you don't have the knowledge, and you need to start looking around you towards the ones that are actually doing it and trying to combine with them. So getting the guys that do know what they're doing and the guys that are learning what they're doing to all kind of start working together so we can actually be combined together against the actual imports for an actual industry then that's working, supporting each other, bringing up our slower and not so good qualified producers, but also holding up the guys that are really doing it right. So to put them out there to push forward, and then for the globe to see that we're actually trying to bring up the other guys around us as well.
The question is my neighbour 300 kilometres down the road my enemy, and is that guy over in that state my enemy? That there's so much pie. There is so much pie that every farm in Australia has room to get along, to share, to grow, and bring in a genetic minefield of just diamonds. Exactly. That there's enough pie for all of the producers here to now fight off the imports. Argentina was one we touched on earlier. Really, they're probably standing as Australia's #1 competitor at the moment. They're about 40 licensed farms. They produce some really good flour. They've got a lower labour cost. So the question isn't, you know, I'm not going to say Australia versus Argentina. They're definitely going to beat us in the soccer. However, we do have the ability, the land, the environment, the knowledge to be able to produce some of the best cannabis in the world and to start sending that out, as well as sustaining our market in our homeland. Yeah. You know, there's one thing Australia is good at, and it's selling land to other countries. You know, we've got a good potential here to hold on to some land, grow some really good cannabis, focus as well on hemp, and really start to grow our portfolio internationally where we're recognised. We used to be recognised by putting a triangle sticker on our products made in Australia, which was able to get us out, and then we just sold all the rights to it. So, you know, maybe medical cannabis is a really good starting point for us to start putting Australia back on the map.
Well, we do. Like when we look at, as you said, with the amount of products that's gone overseas, the amount of production that's gone overseas. But one thing Australia is really good at, and that is our production of medications.
And
our production of
agriculture.
different drugs and agriculture.
Yeah.
Look, we got the cleanest soil, we got the cleanest air, and we got the cleanest water in the absolute world. Now, when you're looking now at agricultural production and medical products, who's going to compare to that? That's Australia's number one advantage. You then look at around as to how our TGA makes us produce products. We've got a lot more restrictions around as to how we actually produce in regards like other worldwide producers. Now, while at the beginning that was all like this is difficult, now you see that's going to one of the differentiators. When it looks to product that's actually being shipped into Europe, that's what they're looking at. They're going, okay, we're going to get good quality, clean product from. And a lot of the European importers are beginning to start looking towards Australia now, so they are. Like Australian and New Zealand product are definitely beginning to increase for the amount of exports that are going into Europe. Now, when you look then at the size of the European market, okay, like what have we got? We got 25, 27 million here people in Australia. The amount of land that we have. When you're looking at Germany, we got 300 million people. Money we got in Poland, we got another like 60, 70 million people in the UK. And we start going, okay, start pumping a product towards them. And everything we're doing here can be producing unique products that they can't get over there, that they can't produce over there. And that's where we need to start looking at how does Australia, differentiate itself from everybody else? How does it give itself its market advantage? And ultimately, how does it make sure that it's sustainable as more and more countries come online producing and selling a product? So how do we do that? The only way we can actually do that is we make every farm absolutely unique. When you've got these small scale producers producing unique boutique products that are completely separate and original from anybody else, as well then working in with doctors, prescribers and universities to see actually what the medical benefit can be of each of these varieties, while producing it in the region, which makes it specific to that region, which using the environment, which uses the genetics and the management to produce a completely unique variant that cannot be replicated anywhere else. To which then where it has its own unique medical benefits, its own unique profiles, its own unique terpenes, volatiles and the rest of it. That's where we start to be completely and utterly sustainable, because we have a product that can't be copied, and we have a product then that nobody else can turn around and go, oh yeah, I've got that same cookies. As well then, you're not in competition with your neighbour. You're not in competition with any of your other cultivators, because what they're producing and what you're producing are completely different. By right, as we look at medicinal cannabis as to how it should actually be and how it's actually being portrayed throughout history, is that, you would be consuming around 3 different varieties a day. Now, when we look then at production in that way, that means at least 3 different products that an individual could be consuming that could be out of Australia a day. Now, whether they're oil-based products, whether they're flower-based products, or whether they're extract-based products, well, that
comes down to the genetic, though.
It's all about genetics, man, right? 80% of your business is going to be genetics. If you don't have something that's good, unique, and different, well, maybe it's the same as everybody else then. What are you going to do? Generic stuff? You know what I mean? You're going to grow another Astro Pop or something, is it? You're going to grow another variant of cookies. I'm so excited. And then once again, that just feeds into that one market. You're either, if we're all growing cookies, you've got the cheapest cookies and you've got the best cookies. They're the only two doing it. And then everyone's arguing in between each other like, oh, who's going to sell what?
It just becomes another race to the bottom. The clear defining answer is like, how is Australia's current market? We're exporting to Europe because the price is better in Europe than it is in our home country, which is telling the story that the imports coming in are damaging the market so much, and these cultivators are now having to look outside of our own country to sell our own product yet again for survival, right? And then not only from that, you have these Australian farms that are now standing out of these 37. You're starting to notice a few of them are getting sold off to international buyers.
Yeah.
You're noticing across the board that a lot of workers are getting let go, not due to skill or ability, but because it's tight. You can visually look at companies all over Australia that keep having to get reinvestment to stay afloat year after year. We're losing. There's absolutely no reason for it. And I think this is where we start to move forward. We start to look into what are the regulations, how do we sustain Australia, and what's the right method, right?
That's it, yeah.
Because we've got the opportunity, we've got the strength, we've got the land, we've got the knowledge, we've got the regulations to set a standard globally. So the next question is, how do we make Australia sustainable? Because currently, from at least my opinion, I don't believe it is.
No, it's not. Look, where right now, for instance, I know just last week I spoke to a cultivator, relatively new into the market. It's got a pretty good product. You don't want to know how low of a price they were actually offered based on the fact that, hey, sure, I can bring it in for less than $1 from somewhere else. So you're kind of going, right, you're an Australian producer. We're paying Australian water prices, electricity prices, we're paying labour costs, waste management. All of these things are kind of have to be,
licensing fees.
Continuing licensing fees.
Year after year.
Which are, once again.
Thank you for the money.
That's it. Like all of these combined. And you're looking at getting between $1,000 to $3,000 a kilo. So even just to pay your license, what are we looking at? Anywhere from 20 to 40 kilos you got to produce just to cover your licenses.
At least.
Okay, at least, right? And that doesn't cover the staff. It's after kind of what you've had to pay to get there.
No, and there's facilities out there that have 70 full-time employees, and then on flex they're up to 140 on harvest season outdoors. And that's every week, 140 wages on one facility every week, full-time. That's a lot of kilos.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of kilos. It's a lot of money. And when we look at the Australian market, it will be going much, much better if we were at least looking at, okay, where are the imports coming from? What's the quality of the imports that are actually coming in? What's the sustainability on the imports? Are they just being swapped out every time? As I said, why is it allowed to be a mystery box for the patient every month? What are they actually going to get in there? Is it going to be the same as last time? Or is it going to be something kind of brand new? Now, if it's something brand new every time, well, how is that going to help the patient? Because it might work 1 month, won't work the next. Patient doesn't like as to how it makes them feel 1 month, or how it actually, or doesn't actually work for them, or doesn't actually give them any medical benefit at all. And then to kind of swap out into other products as well, it starts to kind of take a little bit of a toll. And you're kind of in this system where, right, the product coming in is inconsistent. The product coming in, the quality of it is not the same. Doctors are looking at what they can swap out for something else because, products are here 1 month, not there another month anymore. Like, that's not a medical market.
That's not sustainable.
That's not sustainable. So it's not. So when we look, what is actually kind of sustainable then for Australia? Well, first of all, you got to start looking at what production methods are we actually using. Like, compared to look at like overseas production, if we're looking at South America, like us, they can do large scale greenhouse with supplementary lighting, put that on solar panel production systems, and you are now looking at a very, very cheap of cost of production. So you are. Because essentially, if you can have your facility ran on renewable energies, well, now your electricity costs are extremely low. If you're like water recapture systems and there are water treatment systems that you've got kind of going on, water recycling systems and the rest, like depending on as to how you're actually producing it. Like, for instance, like living soil producers, we have little to no actual runoff of water. So the water consumption can be a lot less, your amendments can be a lot less, and your production then can be a higher production at a cheaper cost once you're kind of sustained and up and going. So really you've got, for Australia, we're looking at long-term sustainability. You've got greenhouses, supplementary lightings, solar powered. Then you're leaning towards the more boutique growers, which will be smaller indoor, trying to use a combination of solar and renewable energies to kind of produce those boutique rare genetics that are simply not able to be produced in an outdoor or in a greenhouse environment. And whether they produce like unique terpenes or whether they produce unique cannabinoids, that's really depending on what the patient is actually looking for and what we're actually looking to do as an actual company, let's say. So if you're looking at where are we looking to sell our product, what are we looking to sell our product for, or like a couple of other companies now which are going, okay, let's start getting some products together so we can start doing some trials, whether that be an observational or whether it be a clinical double-blind trial to see what varieties can be effective for what conditions, in what areas, so on. And then when we look at like actual large-scale production for extracts and the rest of it, outdoors is where the kind of key element is that is. Now, with the Australian environment, the sun, the soil, the air,
the water,
and of course genetics, that's, you can really do some magical things here, so you can. Like, once again, like with Australia's higher UV light, that allows the plant to be able to produce more oils inside it. Now, I'm not necessarily meaning that's going to mean you're going to have higher THC, but what it does mean is that like the actual total amount of oils, whether they be cannabinoids or whether they be terpenes, is going to be increased inside the actual plant. Now, when we then look at like the history of medicinal cannabis, Australia has always produced some of the best flavors, tastes and aromas out there. So the kiss of the sun, the soil and the environment, it allows us to have completely unique varieties here. Now, taking that uniqueness and kind of putting it into all the different regions we have around Australia, getting those farms then to start working in conjunction with each other as to different cultivation methods, different bug pressures, as to how different genetics are performing in those different environments, that's where you can have farms kind of really working together. But that's the sort of thing that California done. Different farms start working together to produce different varieties, to actually trial out different genetics and see then what was the best, what worked best for everyone, and then start breeding projects based on that. So that's why you've got such a vast variety coming out of California, why there's such differentiation in between all of their genetics inside such a kind of a small region. So imagine the differentiation we could get here in Australia with the different regions that we're going, because what you can produce down here is very different than what we can produce up in Queensland, which is going to be very different than what I can produce over in Western Australia. And all of that combined together, that's utterly and completely unique. And if we can focus on that and start to develop for those environments and push it in those regions, we can't be stopped, we can't be touched. And when the larger companies or the larger associations start to ship worldwide, they're shipping generic products. They're shipping another cookies or another fucking Pop-Tart or whatever they want to call it, while what we got coming out of Australia is something that can't be copied. And that's just where we can actually look as to how we can actually work together, create a sustainable industry, and actually provide the patient with a price affordable product at the very end to meet their budget. And it doesn't really matter then as to what your actual budget is or what you're actually able to afford, because the quality of the product you're getting is going to be a top standard no matter where you're actually getting it from.
Really, like I guess a common saying is that we're all stronger as one. And we can be one, we should be one. I believe that everyone who is in the industry should be in the industry for the right reasons. And from history, the culture of cannabis, whether it be medicinal or not, it is love and shared and unity. And we can put that together here in Australia, withhold prices. The patients are still paying a decent price in their home ground for their locally produced flower. Internationally is getting it for a good price, and Australia is now handing out some of the best, if not the best.
That's
right?
it.
There's no reason we can't. We've got so much land. We can go from anything from a 7-week flowering period all the way up to a 20-week flowering period, right?
That's what I love. That's what I love.
And we
where else can you go?
Tasmania is not going to
20-week flowering varieties. Where else? Where do you even hear of 20-week flowering varieties?
Right at the equator.
Are you looking for an upgrade?
Are you looking to save power on LEDs? Well, the Treegers 650 watt is currently on sale. Now this 650 watt stands well above the 720 watts that most of you are purchasing. This is a really high quality LED with removable bars, a 5-year warranty and top bin diodes. You can see how much thought and effort has gone into these. Something as simple as needing to replace a carbon filter in your tent instead of pulling down the whole light, you can now just take out the select bars that are in your way. It also means if your light ever fails or a bar dies, you can just send off the bar and still have a working light. This is extremely important. If the light goes out, your crop's gone. So click the link below, get a special discount on an extremely good light while stocks last.
That's it. Like, but regards as to what the medical benefit is of those, those rare cannabinoids can be found, those rare terpenes, esters, volatiles, all of those, like, imagine the potential that Australia actually has on that scale to produce all of those. And as well, we have the area and we have the land. So when it comes to outdoor production, what does it matter if it takes 8 weeks or 18 weeks to flower outdoors? You can have different sections kind of, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Focusing on their region, right?
Focusing on their region, what you can produce
one of the
best.
biggest reasons I assume a lot of people have chosen not to grow those varieties is because of how the market's been pushed into shit.
Yeah, well,
I need to get paid. So, is there a 5-week strain out yet? Can I flower something in 30 days so I can get 8 runs a year?
yeah. Just for the record, the fastest I've seen is about 44 days. So that's the quickest I've seen.
Yep.
Like that's
But was
for the
it
top.
nice?
It was absolutely terrible. So it was. You know what I mean? Like it didn't even look good in the photos. That's the only way I can describe it to you. But it was produced. People consumed it. Other producers went forward to produce it. Didn't give medical patients any benefit. But hey, it was tried, it was tested, and it failed. And those mistakes will keep coming around again. Because for the last period of time, it's always been about the highest amount of THC in the shortest period of time with the highest amount of weight. Now, with outdoor production...
The prohibition language.
Exactly, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, the more cycles you can get in a year, the better it was going to be, obviously, isn't it?
And the
So,
higher THC,
higher,
you're targeting
of course.
a certain
That's
consumer.
it. Like I said, that's all a fugazi. They're all making up numbers, pulling it out of the air. I'm 25 and I'm 20. Yeah, you know which is all made. These are all,
There's like a 38%
Oh yeah,
THC
38% THC, 42% THC. Yeah, just pick a number. Like whatever one that comes to your head first of all. The paperwork can be manipulated, the product can be manipulated. Like I said, there needs to be a global standard as to where we actually set. What is it when we're actually testing a product? Is it going in with 3% moisture? Is it going in with 11% moisture? What's the moisture content on it when it goes in to be tested, and what's the actual global element on that?
Have you sprinkled some extra
That's
sprinkles
it.
on
You throw
top?
in some extra, you throw in something extra on the top because you need to make it look better. And then how does that look you as a producer either? When your numbers and that don't actually add up, and you're trying to fabricate your numbers and trying to increase them and the rest of it, how does that make you look?
Look like Conor McGregor. That's what it makes you look like.
Oh, you know what? We're not going to talk about that today. We're not going to talk about that one.
I didn't even bet on the fights and I lost money.
Oh, look at right. It was just that was just a sad day.
It's all right. We won't hold you to it, even though he's your mate.
We're Irish, you know what I mean? We're all from nearly the same village. No one comes in too far from each other.
It sounds just like Tasmania.
That's it. Well, actually, Tasmania is bigger than Ireland.
Yeah, well, there you go. And that's why Ireland's gold is the rarest in the world.
That's the rarest gold in the world, you know what I mean? So very, very little of it, you know what I mean? But it's quite special. I wear it around with me every day.
There you go. It's so rare. Rob's got it in Tasmania.
Down in Tasmania.
So as we talk about sustainability, we touched on quite a few different variants there. One big thing is indoors versus outdoors. There's going to be a lot of conversation from cultivators all around the world.
Right. Jump in, fellas. I love the comments on this one. Tell me all about it.
Indoors is better. No, outdoors is better. Indoors is cheaper production. No, outdoors is cheaper production. There's going to be a vast majority of opinions. But yet again, I believe it always comes back down to that producer. Some
That's
producers
it.
are going to be far better at doing the hydro game. Some are going to be better at doing the outdoors and the soils, right? Long-term sustainability. You touched on living soils. It takes quite some time to build up. You believe that living soils can harvest just as much as indoor hydro production. Watch out in the comments. It's going to go...
Bring it. Bring it.
Fuck you, Rob. You're wrong.
Oh, well, you hear me in a minute.
Right. So there are different practices, even indoors. Then you start talking about substrates. What's the best substrate? Is it the rock wool? Is it the cocoa? Am I better off doing soil? Am I better off in a greenhouse? Am I better off just outdoors and have one season a year and then pack up for 6 months? What does it really look like? Because it's such a versatile, there's so many ways to grow. And everyone's going to have their own different style that works for them. You obviously have the benefits of indoors, especially through propagation and vegetation.
Yeah.
I believe that's definitely the fastest method in the controlled environment. Pump out your cuttings, be able to look after your mother plants all year round, ready for your outdoor season. You definitely have a lower cost of production outdoors, but you might not get the flower structure that you're chasing. Yet again, now we've got greenhouses that can be environmentally controlled. We can utilise the sun, we can block it out, we can add CO2 in, we can add supplemental lighting. Where's the future lie? What is the best long term?
Okay, so this is my statement on it, right? Okay, the best outdoor is slightly better than the best indoor. So it is. And the reason I was make that statement is because when we look at outdoor production, that's then when we got that kiss of the sun. Now that brings along a much different variance in the full cannabinoid production, as well as terpenes, volatiles, and those like little esters that are inside there as well. You can't match that on a greenhouse or in an actual indoor production, so you can't. And like we've tested this like across many different environments. We done it in Holland, we done it in Colorado, I done it in Michigan, I done it down in Mexico, I've done it in Africa. And yeah, the smell, flavor, taste, aroma that you get from an outdoor one cannot be matched on indoors. Now, when it comes actually, like when we're looking at what is the actual consistency of the product, yeah, you know what, you may be able to get a bit more consistency on the indoor product, but when you then start looking towards breeding a variety for outdoors, that's where you're going to get something that's extremely similar all the time around. And when you're looking at cost of production as well, you can't beat as to what your outdoor costs are going to be. Nowhere near it. Now, okay, you do have a few risks that are kind of involved in there as well. There's nobody kind of disputing that.
You got one shot. One shot a year.
No, not if you got the genetics. You see, that's what I mean.
Some 44-day fast autos.
Well, when we look at Australia, for instance, like, right, you've got, if you do things right, you can have your spring, you can have your summer, and you can have your autumn crop. So you can. 3 different crops a year, so you can. And then if you've got genetics tuned in to all of those, you can have perfect production right throughout your 3 seasons. Now as well then, when we look at, like, for instance, a lot of the old Dutch varieties, which have been bred for Northern Europe. If you bring Northern European varieties down here and you start to grow them in the wintertime in Australia, now you got a winter crop that you can start getting off, which again makes a completely different product than what you're going on in the summertime. So each of your genetics, each of your seasons is producing a completely different product that you can then provide into markets that can't produce anything like it. Now, if you're producing indoors and you're using an off-the-shelf bottle, I'm not going to say anyone, but if you're coming into, let's say you went into the Grow Guys, for instance, and you've got set up your new facility there, and you're looking at
that.
Sorry, bro, I couldn't help it. Right? So let's
You know
just
what?
say, you can't. I know, I can't, bro.
I'm
but
trying to think of a way around it.
I can't.
You can't drop me like that.
Right?
Oh, look at that. It's 911 already calling. No.
So, Right, when you look at then for an indoor production and you're going for a off-the-shelf brand of nutrients, well, sure, what's the difference between your facility here and the guy in Canada or the guy in like Europe, like, or in Germany or the UK, like where he doesn't have as much heat problems, he doesn't have the humidity problems, and he doesn't have the extra expenses then that you've got over here to produce your indoor product. So is that really the best sustainable option? Or should we not be working with the environment that we have here to, bring out and tease out those uniqueness in all the genetics? And then, start looking at, for regards indoor production for R&D, for those petite and petite rare varieties that, can't be produced outdoors. Or like when you put them in the Australian sun, they're simply not able to handle it because they've been mollycoddled and bred indoors for the last 20 years in a facility somewhere else entirely, whether that be North America, South America, wherever.
Look, you're throwing a big claim out there that cannabis can be grown outdoors in Australia 3/4 of the year.
Yeah, baby.
What about regions like New South Wales where it's wet and Tasmania where it's really wet and cold? Humidity issues, right? You're gonna come into struggles, right? So let's just say they've got 6 months of the year for outdoors. What do you do the other 6 months of the year? You've got people to feed.
Yeah.
What are you meant to do then? You're meant to be in a greenhouse. You're meant to be indoors. Preference.
Well, look, ideally, the perfect kind of scenario was if everybody had their perfect situation would be where you've got your greenhouse, which is solar powered, sustainable, and the rest of it. Supplementary lighting, ideally working on a kind of an organic or a living soil scenario, producing all year round. And then you've got your outdoor, which is doing towards the seasons, and then you've got your indoor, which is for your R&D, keeping your mother plants alive, keeping your genetic stock alive. Like we even find this, for instance, is that like mother plants, your genetic stock, you've had them indoors for like a year, 18 months. We bring them outside for a season. The kiss of the sun invigorates them all again, so it brings back that life into them, brings that vigor, it brings that flavour, taste, aroma. It's almost like you've given them a new lease of life. Now, if the plant is looking dreary and you bring it outside and the kiss of the sun rebounds it and revigorates it, what does that do when you're consistently going through a cultivation and when you're consistently going a flower at the end? So if we know that indoors under lights, the plant starts to get dreary and weary after a while, and that doesn't happen outdoors, well, there's definitely one advantage over outdoor and greenhouse production straight away. It definitely makes the plant be in a happier place and a more productive place. A happier, more productive plant is going to give you a better cannabinoid and terpene and volatile expression compared to something that, as I said, you've got on rails and you're forcing it down a path.
On to one of Australia's biggest issues now is that our labour costs are just through the roof. We've got inflation growing much faster than everyone's pay. Australia is known for high labour costs, thus the cost of the product at the end. We've got other countries online with much cheaper labour hire coming in, trim crews coming in. You know, that trimming, I believe, is a huge area where we lose out on.
Yeah.
Obviously, as well as feet on the ground looking after the plants. How are we meant to sustain with the cost of living and the price that we pay the employees to work on the farms?
Yeah, it's difficult.
There's cultivators out there that, you know, think of a base wage in Australia. We're paying $35 an hour, all the way up to the pros on the job, who have the history and the knowledge, which are getting paid probably well into the 3 figures an hour. What are you meant to do?
Okay, so for a start, there's a lot of companies in Australia which are very top heavy. So they are. Like with these things, we always kind of best is that they have to be kind of run on the minimum amount of top management at the top and the maximum amount down here. So if you've got 10 people at the top on 6-figure salaries, well, all of that has to be paid for before anything else happens, right? Because that's how it works.
That's the funnel.
That's the funnel. They get paid and the money goes all the way down, and then when things start to go wrong, the guys at the bottom also slowly starts to get rid of. Yeah, even though the guys at the top make the decisions. But anyway, You look at that, and then you look at the cost of production, you look as to how much they have to produce, and you have to look at all these salaries and wages that have to be paid. So the structure of your company has to be looked at in the first place. Then it is with regards as to, what you're actually producing. You've got to be setting yourself up as an actual proper premium producer. You're paying highly qualified staff to actually, which have been educated here in Australia or in a similar environment somewhere else overseas, to actually come here and do a job in cultivation. That's where essentially we should be using it as. Skilled staff, premium product in a premium production area. As I said, our soil, our air, our environment, we need to rely on what exactly that we have that other manufacturers and other competitors around the world don't have, right? And we've got a lot of those in that area, so we do. And we've a lot of, as I said, when we look at, as I said, agricultural production in Australia, it's a lot of what's produced here is shipped all over the world. We got wheat, we got grain and the rest of it, which has been, shipped back to Europe, and they can produce it there just as well, but they can't produce it the same quality we can here. So
carrots seed.
Carrots. So
we seed the carrots here to send them off to Japan. They do it with all the seeds. They send them back, and then we sell them our carrots.
Yeah.
It just goes back and forth, but at the end of the day, Australia wins on the export.
That's it. So why aren't we applying the same techniques and the same professionalism to medicinal cannabis?
Because the last 2 years have been nothing short of a race to the bottom.
Yes,
it's now becoming, how cheap can we get this out? Cheaper. Let's
Let's
sell it cheap.
And it's how is that sustainable?
Instead, it
how
should
is
be.
that a business for anybody?
It's not.
Nobody wins there.
You watch any market go, we'll have a race to the bottom. See who wins. It'll be China. It'll be the mass producer. Whoever the mass producer is, wins. Those $10 ounces in Detroit and Michigan that are coming over, they win.
Yeah.
Right? So we should be putting up our shields and standing as a united force to go, no, our product is premium. However, the downside of currently standing is that Australia's product isn't premium yet.
No, we have a few premium producers.
Well, you got a few.
But not everybody.
Not as an average as a whole.
That's it. So, like I said, working with regards producers and government reform and the rest of it to set a proper standard as to how cultivation in Australia is going to take place is extremely important. We have to look at Australia for regards producing a premium product. We got to look at the cultivators setting a higher standard for themselves from the beginning, so that the product that we produce is to a higher standard than anywhere else. That's how we determine the market, and that's how we push ourselves forward, and that's how we take the market.
You've got control of your farm, but then how do you help other cultivators and other facilities grow and evolve as well?
That's why
there's a lot of people out there that go, I'm the maddest consultation guy out there. Give me 100K, I'll make your facility great. And then 2 years later, the facility's shut. So how do you educate everyone and help the whole Australian market to grow? You're working on something, don't you?
Yes, we're actually currently working. We've got the Cannabis Council Australia, and we're looking at setting up proper standards here for as to how a medication is going to be provided, to put the focus on exactly for the patient, so it is. So that will also include then proper standards around as to how the product is going to be produced, as well to put Australia to that higher standard.
Not only is the labour cost one of the big conversations that we need to have, is it's the imports too. These imports are damaging currently, to say the least. So we're talking about mitigation in Australia being better producers, to have the premium product to be able to hold its boundaries up, essentially. But what do you do in the meantime? Because there are farms out there, Australian farms, that are importing product and then they're putting it back into the cycle, into the economy. There are definitely people out there bringing in a lot of product just to wash their hands. They don't care. It's damaging the medical market really as a whole. So what's the short-term fix of sustainability on that until we're able to provide the product that you envision Australia being able to do?
Okay, well, look at basically the imports is kind of determining the quality of it. So it is. So the highest end quality from around the world is determining what the Australian producers have to make. So the way I see it, if I could make the rules and regulations around it, I'd only be accepting imports from countries that are going to accept imports from us, right? As well then as to actually look at how production is going on around the world and actually kind of go, okay, what can Australia do with that, and how can we raise that standard? So it is. That's really as to where we see as to how do we push ourselves forward, how do we combat actual imports, and how do we also at the same time, we got to convince the Australian public that what actually Australian producers actually go through to bring that product to them. Like, as I speak with many kind of patients, and they're kind of going, I speak to them going, well, this is the import product, this is the standards it's done under, but here's the Australian product. Now here's what the guys and girls have had to go through to produce this. And once a lot of Australians understand it, they go, oh, okay, now I understand why I need to pay a little bit more for an Australian product. But we always know you have to pay a bit more for higher quality anyway. So if you want that higher quality product, paying a few extra dollars shouldn't really be a problem. And as well as, like, you're not just supporting anybody overseas anymore. You're supporting your own mates here. You're supporting your own industry here in Australia, and you're supporting a global market for Australia to properly step into. Now, as Australians and a smaller population in the world, we do have the potential to kind of lead the medicinal cannabis thing. So is that not enough to make the entire Australian population, government, supporters, to get behind that and push that forward? Yeah, sure. It's going to be more difficult than anybody else, but Australia's never been fair of a fight.
One of the things that will continue to evolve, history always repeats itself, is the adult use market within Australia. With the adult use market, it brings a lot of extra money, it brings a lot of extra companies coming in, cultivators, dispensaries, clubs, lounges, you name it. Big money dump, market increases, price falls out. It's inevitable if we follow the tracks. So what we're doing is we're setting up a well-reformed and well-executed medicinal cannabis plan to protect medical patients. That's what you envision in doing, is setting up a safe net for the medical side. What happens when the adult use kicks in, though? Isn't that a major concern to medical producers, or how are you going to mitigate anything like that moving forward?
Well, medical producers' concern should only be about the quality of the product that they're producing, right? Consistent quality products that actually have a medical benefit to the patient. Now, yeah, we always hear that the adult use is going to keep coming back around, but like, look, when we're looking at developing an industry, let's get the medical side right first. Let's get consistency in the products there. Let's get an actual how they need to be cultivated, how they need to actually be produced, and how they need to be distributed to patients, and yeah, whether it be here or whether it be globally. When we kind of get all of that into place, right, then we start to look at, okay, right, what has happened around the world when we've seen medical markets and adult use markets kind of go into place. First thing that happens is, yeah, the market is saturated. The cost of product drastically drops, which, like, I'm heading off to Detroit in the morning. Yeah, it's $10 an ounce. Yeah, medical, recreational, it doesn't matter anymore.
Do you think we've even got time to set the medical standard before it switches to adult use?
Yeah, we do, yes. We've got plenty of time here. Australia's not going to be rushing into that. Australia is a world leader in medical product production. And that's where Australia needs to maintain its level for at the moment. Now, it doesn't matter what way it goes, because it is all a benefit for the actual patient in the end, because it all means a higher quality of product.
I think as we've moved on in the conversation, we've really touched on what model's going to survive, what sustainability looks like moving forward. Outdoors, greenhouse backup, indoor for your boutique strains, your mother plants, propagation, that becomes the line. Then 80% of that you mentioned is going to be the genetics.
Yeah.
There obviously has to be some play in terms of how the medical standard will be set. We set the standard, we then move on to other things in the adult use market. But the main focus currently is protecting Australians, protecting the cultivators and anyone along the line. Are extracts going to be a massive play in Australia with the amount of land that we have and what we're able to do and produce? Is that going to be a huge determining factor of these farms surviving, is going down the extract route with mass biomass?
Okay, so when we look at the medicinal cannabis historically, it's always been about extracts. We're the first kind of civilization to really be kind of consuming flower. Right? Never really was done before throughout civilizations and throughout the history of medicinal cannabis. Historically, extracts have always been the preferred medical delivery system, so it is. When we now look as well around the world regards medical markets, we see that at the beginning they usually are flower dominant, but as the market evolves and as patients get to understand exactly what works and what doesn't work, that starts to drift towards a higher concentration of extracts. So it does. So in the long-term goal, medicinal cannabis has always historically moved more towards extracts than it has of kind of a flower base. So I presume that the same thing is kind of going to happen here. And again, for that large scale outdoor production, we get a mass amount of biomass to turn into those exceptional quality extracts.
All right, I've got some quick fires for you. The year Australia passes federal adult use.
2037.
Domestic share of supply in 2030.
Ooh, I want that to be, or we want it to be, is a complete flip. I want 70% Australian consumption, production, and 30% imports.
First major foreign player to exit Australia.
Oh, I could get in trouble for that one. They'll be Canadian anyway, all right? They'll be Canadian.
Does flower stay dominant or do extracts take over?
When we actually look at sustainability and how exactly Australia is going to survive in that market, we have to start to look at what is a cost per gram production out the door. What is the cost per kilo of electricity? How much water are we using to produce every kilo? How much pesticides are we using? What is the soil quality? And what is the patient as well? Affordability at the very end of all of that. Like, we build all of these really fancy facilities with all this really high-tech equipment, which costs high tens of millions of dollars to do. Where do we ever see that kind of being returned? Where do we ever see that kind of focusing on, when the reality should be, we start off with small scale, we perfect that, and then as an actual, like with any other business, we start to scale it based on that there. So that's how every farmer gets to produce quality and produce it on scale, working in conjunction with those who've already done it, whether that be with an overseas partner, which at the moment we're kind of setting up to bring an awful lot of overseas producers to come over here and help Australian producers, outdoor, greenhouse, and some indoors, to kind of just start moving to that next level with regards to it. So international cooperation with people who actually really like what we're doing down here and really want to kind of push that forward. Like, you got to understand, like, for instance, when we all started in America, it was a huge amount of people from Amsterdam that went over there to start kind of help building the American industry. The same was out with the Spanish industry. So, and we look for the same now for the Australian industry. A lot of guys over here are from the States. Like, I'm over here, but I've been over here 14 years, a little bit of a difference. But the more of those quality guys we get coming in, sharing that knowledge with the guys here, and then pushing that back out again so that we can have information sharing. The guys from here are working over there, they are working over here, and we're pushing then the entire industry forward. And that's sustainability, so it is. Using the environment, what we've got, our uniqueness, to produce our own unique products so that nobody else can touch us in the market.
Just like champagne being from a certain region, right?
That's it. Well, I love my Chablis, and I only drink it from the Chablis region. And going into the future, I'm pretty sure that the majority of cannabis production is going to be coming out of Australia. So,
Rob, is there a message that you would like to share to cultivators or anyone in the industry within Australia?
There's only two things, guys. The competition is the imports, and the only other thing is it's outdoor versus indoor. That's the only competition needs to be going on, and that's where we should be kind of coming at looking at how we can help each other. Let's have competitions. Let's push each other. But that's as I said, the only competition is outdoor versus indoor. Not that my cookies is different than his cookies and how much money I'm going to get from mine. Let's just change the game a bit.
Do you believe cannabis is sustainable in Australia? Drop the comments below and let us know. Rob, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Jack.